Hello, and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, January 25th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. We got a lot to get into today. We also have an exciting night ahead of us in the world of sports, as you got a lot of hockey and basketball on tonight. We're coming off of a couple games on last night in the world of the NHL and the NBA and college. Tonight, though, you got the Rangers, you got the Nets, you got the Islanders. Knicks will have the night off, so a lot going on tonight, a lot to get into today. We get closer and closer and closer to AFC and NFC championship games on Sunday, couple days out. Next podcast will obviously be the Football Friday podcast, getting you ready for Bengals, Chiefs, and Arrowhead, Cincinnati, or in Kansas City at Arrowhead, and then Niners and Philly at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. So should be two good games. Looking forward to it for the right to go to the Super Bowl. And after that, then you get a week without no football, and then you get the whole Super Bowl week leading up to it, which I'll have a lot of content on here leading up to Super Bowl 57 in Arizona. And then it's the Super Bowl, and then all the offseason stuff begins for all 32 NFL teams. But there's already a lot going on with the two teams here in New York, and that's what we're going to get into today. I want to start off today's podcast talking about Aaron Rodgers and the rumors surrounding him and the New York Jets, as over the past couple days, the rumors with Aaron Rodgers have begun to pick up steam. It seems like every day there's a news story that gets out about the Jets are willing to do this. Woody Johnson would happily trade this, do that. Rodgers would take a pay cut. It seems like every day we're getting new information. So I want to get you my thoughts on Rodgers, how I would feel if the Jets get him, where the Jets currently stand, give you kind of an update on Rodgers, and talk about the rumors surrounding him and the New York Jets. We'll also get to Saquon Barkley, as the Giants season, as we all know, ended Saturday night with a dud in Philadelphia, losing 38-7. Their offseason officially started. Joe Shane, Brian Dable had their postseason press conferences. And Saquon Barkley, the reports are he wants a deal similar to Christian McCaffrey. Should the Giants give it to him, there's a risk involved. Should the Giants do it, I'll get into that. I'll get into kind of where the Giants are with Barkley and why Barkley and Jones are, two big contracts that are pivotal, but you might have a scenario where you might only need to bring one back. And is Barkley really worth being paid $16 million a year, which is what McCaffrey is getting right now? We'll get into all that and much more. And obviously, we'll get you ready. Rangers in Toronto tonight against the Maple Leafs. Nets are in Philly against the Sixers. And the Islanders are also in Canada tonight. They will be in Ottawa against the Senators. So a lot going on tonight, a lot to get to today on the program. With all that being said, this is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get right into it. So as the NFL offseason rolls on for every team except the Eagles, Niners, Bengals, and Chiefs, we continue to hear all the news surrounding the quarterback situations, all these teams that are looking for head coaches, the Texans, the offensive coordinator openings throughout the league, specifically the Jets. We're hearing names that, coming up here. It's kind of slowed down a little bit the past couple days, but every so often, every couple days we get a new name. We get a couple new names that are on the list, and we're sitting here January 25th, and the offseason's very young. Look, the season isn't even over, but for 28 of the 32 teams it is, and we're down to the Final Four, and after this weekend, you'll have one game left, and that's it, and it'll be two teams left, and it's either going to be the Chiefs and the Bengals, or Chiefs and the Bengals come out of the AFC, or the Niners and the Eagles. So things are starting to heat up a little bit, especially when we get into February, get into March, things will really start to heat up. Trades can really happen anytime. So it'll be interesting to see how things go. But with the New York Jets, right, their quarterback situation is the biggest question. And again, that's been the question for a long time now. Every year it seems like the quarterback's a question. The Jets finished 7-10 this year, lose 6 straight, fire Mike LaFleur, looking for an offensive coordinator. We find ourselves in a very similar situation that we've found ourselves in many different times. And we've heard names like Jimmy G. We've heard names like Derek Carr. We've heard Lamar Jackson. Last week, Lamar Jackson was the big story. Now this week, Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets is beginning to pick up steam. And it's an interesting it's an interesting topic because it's kind of like out of the middle of nowhere. It's like things are really starting to heat up with Rodgers. You heard kind of the rumors at the beginning of all this. During the season, we were talking about potential quarterbacks next year. Some people brought up the thought of Rodgers. But now with things coming out like they are, it seems like the Rodgers to the Jets is getting a little bit more realistic by the day. And I'll start off with this. And I mentioned this last night. I recorded a Jets podcast on my In the Trench with Gangrene podcast. If you want to check that out, you can. I recorded last night, and I opened up with this, and I'll open it up with it again. This quarterback search for the New York Jets is probably the most important offseason that this team has had in a very long time. Because if they don't get this right, with the Giants, their crosstown team, or not really crosstown, but because they play in the same stadium, but the other team in New York getting it right, if they bring back Jones, they got their franchise guy, they have their head coach, they have their GM, they have a lot of guys on their roster that, you got Daniel Jones, you got Thibodeau, you've got some foundational pieces, they got to the division round, you feel good with where they're at, right? For the Jets, after this year falling 7-10, losing 6 straight to end the year, raising ticket prices, you now have people not renewing their season tickets that have been season ticket holders for years and years and years. If the Jets mess this up, there's a good chance this team is in darker days than they were with Gaze and when they were with Kotite. Because nobody's going to want to come coach here. Nobody's going to want to play here. Nobody's going to trust the owner because this is, again, another failed situation. It will be 13 years if we miss the playoffs this year without the postseason. It will be really bad. And the Jets will become an afterthought. Nobody will be showing up to games. It will be embarrassing. Players will want out. Nobody's going to want to be here. The Jets got to get this right. This is massive for this Jet team, and I know everyone knows that. But watching what the Giants did and seeing how they've gotten it right and they're on the upwards, for the New York Jets, if they're embarrassing and if they mess this up, they're going to become an afterthought, and it could be even worse than the days of Kotite and Adam Gaze, who together in their worst season got a combined 3 wins together with the 2-14 season and the 1-15 season back in the 90s prior to Parcells taking over after Kotite. So that is where we could be headed if we mess this up. So the Jets got to get this right. They have to. And now you hear the name of Aaron Rodgers. And look, I'm not really opposed to bringing Rodgers in. Like, I wouldn't hate bringing in Rodgers. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I would accept it. I think all of Jet fans would. You feel good about your chances of making it to the playoffs. My only concern, and I'll say this about Rodgers, my only concern with Aaron Rodgers is, what is he going to be like in the locker room? Because if you recall this past year in Green Bay when they were struggling, I believe it was after the Washington loss against the Commanders in Washington or wherever they play. I think it's for Maryland, I think they play. I don't even know where they play. I forget, but it's somewhere around there. After that loss, he blamed some of his receivers, and he didn't take any accountability. And he kind of pointed the finger, put the blame game on all the different players, and it was like, our slow start, our bad performances, none of it has to do with me. It has to do with everyone else. I'm not the problem. And he his personality, his way that he kind of pointed the finger in the locker room and all those different things set a lot of people the wrong way around the league. That's my only concern I have with Aaron Rodgers. But the Jets need a quarterback. They need a guy that's going to come in here, get them to the playoffs, and hopefully, eventually, take them over the top. And Aaron Rodgers, bringing him in, if you bring in Rodgers, you have to win a championship within the next 2 years. Rodgers isn't going to be here for 4 years. Okay, he's going to be 40 years old through the middle of next year. I believe he turns 40 in December of next season. Okay, he's getting up there in age. Most quarterbacks, if you have a longevity in the league, you're probably going to play up until your late 30s, early 40s, unless if you're Tom Brady, where he'll probably play until he's 80. But he's not human. That's Brady's on a different pedestal than every other quarterback. But Rodgers is a 2-time MVP. He won back-to-back MVPs in 2020 and 2021, throwing 48 touchdowns in 2020, 37 in 2021. And this year, his numbers took a little bit of a dip, but they weren't because of, I wouldn't say they were because of him. He was playing with new receivers. There was kind of a learning gap there. There was a chemistry gap there that he had to fill. He was also working with Allen Lazard and Christian Watson, as I mentioned. Christian Watson, a rookie. He had some growing pains. And I'm not trying, again, I just mentioned the fact that he blamed some of his receivers in the locker room. That's unacceptable. That can't happen. I don't care how bad they're playing. You can't point the finger. You just can't do it. Because then the locker room starts to get separate and it's just a train wreck. So you got to take accountability. So that I did have an issue with, but Watson wasn't playing very well earlier in the year. Allen Lazard was their leading receiver. If he would to come to the Jets have more talent than the Packers do. Rodgers, nobody's doubting what he can do on the field. Okay, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You want to call last year a down year for him? Okay, he was still 7th in the NFL in touchdowns, and he was still 11th in the NFL in yards. Last year, a supposed down year for Aaron Rodgers without Devontae Adams for the first time in his career. You look at it and you say, okay, it was a down year, but a down year for him, it was still a top 10 season for a quarterback, and I know they missed the playoffs, but again, you put him on the Jets, Garrett Wilson's better than Allen Lazard. Okay, he's a better number one. You bring in another receiver, they're most likely better than a guy like a Christian Watson, who is a rookie. Garrett Wilson's better than Christian Watson. He's better than both his two receivers. You would assume Garrett Wilson's play, who, by the way, last year, Garrett Wilson had over 1,000 yards. He had 1,100 yards. If you give Garrett Wilson Derek Carr, he can be on a level of DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You give Garrett Wilson Aaron Rodgers, he could turn into a top 3, top 5 receiver in all of football. So this would benefit everybody. Bringing in a quarterback would benefit just about everybody on the team, including the receivers. Something else that the Packers did really well was they incorporate the running backs into the passing game, and you'll get Breece Hall back next season. So you assume he will get incorporated a lot more. He'll get a lot more looks, especially in the receiving game. Him and Bam Knight, they'll work well together. I'm not against, bringing in Rodgers. I understand the personality is an issue. I get all that. I do have my concerns. With how he is in the locker room. But when it comes to his on-field ability, he's one of the best in the league. He really is. When it comes to what he can do on the field. And that's why he was a back-to-back MVP, Super Bowl champion. And it looks like you're going to probably have to give up 2 first-round picks. You're probably going to have to give up 2 first-round picks for Rodgers. So this is my other point. You bring in Rodgers, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, but I didn't expand on it a ton because I wanted to leave this kind of as my last point before I get to some numbers, and then we'll get to Saquon here in a second. But Rodgers, if you bring him in, again, 39, he'll be 40 next season. You bring in Rodgers, it's a win now, it's a win now move. Especially maybe if you bring in Rodgers and, hit the jackpot and trade for DeAndre Hopkins, which us as Jet fans, we'd explode. DeAndre Hopkins, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Breece Hall in the backfield. That probably a top 5 offense in football, right? So all of them, that'd be unbelievable. You got to win a Super Bowl then. Anything less than a Super Bowl is a bust. So the expectation would be high. You bring in Derek Carr, it's 4 or 5 years probably of Carr, you'd assume. He'll get you to the playoffs. Is he going to bring you over the top? That's a question. Rodgers, he's capable of bringing you over the top. Put the right pieces around him, right coaching in the playoffs, and he can do it. And I'll tell you what, if you bring in Rodgers, the Jets should win the AFCs. Bringing in, and this is what Jet fans have to realize, and this is why it's a high risk, because it has potential to blow up in your face. Anything less than a championship, it's a fail. It's a fail. If he comes here for 1 year and wins you a wild card round and wins you a wild card game and you get eliminated, and then he retires next season and you traded away 2 first-round picks and maybe another pick and maybe a player for Rodgers just to get you to the divisional round for 1 year, it's a fail. If Rodgers comes here, it better be because you're all in on winning a championship. You can't bring Rodgers here and just be satisfied with a playoff berth. You got to bring in Rodgers because you got to get to a Super Bowl. And you better win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. That's got to be the expectation, especially with the price he's at. The price he's at, 2 first-round picks. Well, I mean, that's the price of a guy that you're going to bring in to win you a championship. So it's Super Bowl or bust with Rodgers. It's a high risk because it has potential to blow up in your face, but it's a high reward. Your high reward is you win a championship, and that's all us Jet fans want. Win a Super Bowl. If he can do that, his legacy here will be stamped. He could play here for 1 year, win a Super Bowl, and retire. I don't care if we have no picks the next season. I don't care. If we win a Super Bowl, that's all that matters. So just some other things. Adam Schefter reported a couple days ago that the Packers don't want him to trade him to the NFC. So they want him to, they want to trade him to the AFC. So that brings up another point here where you kind of look at the teams in the AFC that could be interested in a quarterback. So Bills, no. Dolphins, Patriots, possibly. Obviously the Jets. You look at the AFC North. Nobody really in the AFC North. Pittsburgh's got Pickett. I think they're going to stay with him. Cleveland's going to stay with Watson. Nor could they probably even afford Rodgers with the amount they're paying Watson. You look at the AFC South. Jacksonville, no. Indy, they need a quarterback. Rodgers could be a radar. They love bringing in veterans that are there for a year, then they leave. That's what Indy loves to do. I still feel like Indy's going to take the path of drafting a quarterback, but we'll see. And Houston needs a quarterback, but I don't think they're not bringing in Rodgers. AFC West, well, they don't need quarterbacks. I mean, the Raiders do, but you get some rumors. The biggest, to me, Derek Carr's name's all over. Like, if the Packers only want to trade Rodgers to AFC teams, that eliminates over half the league, obviously. That eliminates 16 teams out of 32. But, with Carr, there's a lot of teams out there. Like, you've heard the Dolphins pop up with Carr. You've heard the Colts pop up with Carr. You've heard the Texans pop up with Derek Carr. You've heard the Raiders not Raiders. Raiders was Rodgers. You've heard Washington. Like, you've heard a ton of teams. Not like they're getting Derek Carr, but you've heard Derek Carr, teams be interested, or a team that could be interested in Derek Carr. There's a lot of them out there. I mean, you could make the argument the entire NFC South could want Derek Carr, right? So it does give you that about thing. My biggest to me, this is the Jets to lose. Like, Rodgers is in a way the Jets to lose. That's how I see it. Because I look at it as the AFC West, you got the Raiders there. That's probably your biggest threat. And the Raiders might, too, bring in Brady, But Rodgers might go there. Devontae Adams could be potential link up, which is what we've heard. You've also heard Brady possibly going there because of Josh McDaniels. So, though, the Raiders are in the market there. That would personally be probably the biggest threat to the New York Jets of getting Rodgers. Other than that, they have the draft picks. They have the pieces to do it. They have what it takes to trade for him. It's just a matter of, does Woody Johnson, does this front office really want to go all out and do it? And that's a question, obviously, for the Jets. So trading to the AFC, Peter King reported, too, that Price is 2 firsts, as I mentioned. And the reports are Woody Johnson and the New York Jets would happily do it. Again, who knows how true that is, but to bring in a guy to win you a Super Bowl, I don't care how much you're giving up. And then Rodgers has said that he will rework his deal if necessary, which probably is needed because the salary cap for the Jets is in a tough spot. But, again, I mean, you're probably cutting Corey Davis. Maybe they move on from a guy like Lincoln Tomlinson or restructure Carl Lawson, restructure Tomlinson. You could definitely do that. The cap can always be maneuvered a little bit to make room. And something else. The Jets have had a lot of bad quarterback play. We all know that. I want to give you a number. We talk about closing the gap this year in the division. The Jets went 2-4 this year in the division, which isn't awful, but it's you got swept by New England, which isn't great. But 15 starts in Rodgers' career against the AFC East, and this was via Will Parkinson on Twitter, and I actually have another tweet from him as well, from Will Parkinson. Does a great job, has a podcast as well. But in his 15 starts versus the AFC East, Rodgers is 10-5 with 4,037 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. No Jets quarterbacks could ever do that. And in Aaron Rodgers passing touchdowns since 2020, he's at 111. The Jets as a franchise passing touchdowns since 2016, only 123. And 51 since 2020. So Rodgers has topped our franchise, all of our quarterbacks, really over the past decade. Rodgers has 218 touchdowns in that time frame and 4 interceptions. The Jets quarterbacks have thrown 120 interceptions since 2016. So it's been a mess. You bring Rodgers, you got to win a Super Bowl. There's a risk, but the high reward is he gets you a championship. It's championship or bust with Aaron Rodgers. All right, now we move to Big Blue as their season ended on Saturday night with a tough loss to their rivals, Philadelphia Eagles in Philly at the Link, 38-7. And now their offseason officially begins. And, the two big stories with the New York Giants are Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Is Daniel Jones going to be back, and is Saquon Barkley going to be back? And listening to Joe Shane's press conference and Brian Dable speak as well, it seemed as if Daniel Jones is going to be back. They're going to do what they can in their power to bring him back. But Connor Hughes put it really well, actually, with some of his reporting and some of the quotes he put out there. Like, Joe Shane sounded warm and fuzzy with Daniel Jones when talking about him, like, oh, he's great, this and that. We want him back. He did this, he did that. And then you hear about Saquon, and it's kind of like, we've had some negotiations. We're still far off on a deal. We have to see how everything plays out. It was kind of like Daniel Jones, they want him back. Saquon Barkley, it's like he's our number 2 priority. We want him back, but if he's not back, it's not the end of the world. We're not gonna go all out for Barkley. Like, I think the Giants in their head kind of have a number for where Saquon Barkley's at. So those are the two big questions with this Giant team. And obviously there's a lot of other things they need. They need to improve the offensive line. If Barkley goes, they're going to need to do something with running back because Matt Breida can't be your running back for an entire season. So if Barkley does leave and go elsewhere, you're looking at a situation where you're in need of another running back. Whether they draft a guy, whether they sign a guy that's not as expensive as Barkley, trade for a guy, whatever they do, they would need a replacement for him. They need a receiver. I mean, they need a couple, right? You look at their defense, linebackers, safeties, corners, Julian Love, free agent. Do they bring him back? That's a question. Interior defensive lineman. Really, to be honest with you, the Giants probably need an upgrade at every position except running back and quarterback, which there's a possibility neither Daniel Jones and Saquon's back. Now, I'm not saying they're not coming back, but they're free agents. Anything could happen. I mean, a team out of the Houston Texans can come in and give Daniel Jones a top 5 contract for a quarterback, give him a massive deal, bring him to Houston. A team can come out and give Barkley a $20 million deal, make him a highest paid running back in football, higher than, Ezekiel Elliott, and the Giants lose him. That can always happen. That's what free agency is all about, and that's why it's free agency. Anybody can come get you. Any 32 or 31 of the other NFL teams can get you. If I had to guess, Daniel Jones is back with the Giants. I don't see a world where Daniel Jones doesn't come back. I think unless if a team, again, like just using a team that needs a quarterback, the Texans, a team like that, I don't think the Jets are getting Daniel Jones. Nor do I think the Jets would go all out and give Daniel Jones all the money. But let's say a team that's in need of a quarterback goes all out for Daniel Jones and gives him this massive deal. Then you let him walk because he's not worth that. Daniel Jones is a very good quarterback. He's not an elite quarterback, right? That's the thing with Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley, this is where he's interesting because you could put him in the category of elite running backs, but health is a big issue with him. And this year he had a very good season. He was 4th in the NFL in yards. He was 9th in the NFL in touchdowns. He was 4th in the NFL in attempts. And there's a good chance that if Daniel Jones didn't have Saquon Barkley, or I shouldn't say just Daniel Jones, the Giants didn't have Saquon Barkley, there's a good chance they wouldn't be where they were this season. Because there was times this year where, especially early in the year, they relied on Saquon a lot. I mean, early in the season, here's some of the games. 35 carries. I mean, this wasn't really early, but some of the games this year. 35 carries against Houston. 31 carries against Chicago, 21 carries against Carolina, 24 against Jacksonville, 22 against Baltimore, 20 against Seattle. Like the first half of the season, the first 8-9 games, Barkley's numbers, his carries were way up there. And he started to struggle a little bit around Thanksgiving where he had those back-to-back games against Detroit and in that game against Dallas on a short week, Thanksgiving in Dallas, where he kind of struggled a little bit. He had 15 carries against Detroit, 22 yards, 11 carries against Dallas, 39 yards. And it was almost like he started to wear down a little bit. And then you go to, then they start, 9 carries against Philly, 18 against Washington, 9 against Philly, 18, 14, 12. The carries started to decline a little bit as the second half of the year because they really used him a lot in the first half of the season. And Barkley in the 2 playoff games was not bad. Totally, he had 18 carries for 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he averaged a little above 6 yards a carry. So he had a good year. Barkley had a very good season. Barkley this season, when you look at the numbers, I know when you watch him play, at times maybe guys like Derrick Henry and guys like CMC and Dalvin Cook maybe say, man, what plays he's making. But when you look at the numbers, Barkley this season was a top 5 running back. And he wants to get paid like a top 5 running back. So that portion of the argument where it's like Barkley's was a top 5 running back this year, was top 5 in yards, top 5 in carries, top 10 in touchdowns, number 9 in the NFL with 10 touchdowns this season for a running back. And he wants to get paid like Christian McCaffrey, who right now is the 3rd highest paid running back behind Elliott and Kamara and is currently making the most for a running back per year at $16 million. Barkley has expressed interest. He declined a 12-year deal during the season. Not a 12-year deal, I apologize. A $12 million deal per year during the season. And the rumors are he wants $16 million. He wants CMC. He did mention, though, he doesn't want to reset the market. Like, Barkley doesn't want to go out there and get a 7-year deal, $95 million, get more than Elliott and like 18-something million a year. He doesn't want this crazy deal. But he does want a deal like Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey's deal right now is currently the 4th highest among total, not per year. He's making the highest per year. He's got the highest AAV with $16 million per year. But he's 3rd in terms of the actual total. And that's a 4-year, $64 million deal for Christian McCaffrey. So the side of that, the one side is Barkley deserves it. But then you look at the other side and you say, okay, for a guy that has hurt his knee, missed the entire 2020 season other than the 2 games, had the torn ACL, he's going into his 6th year. There was moments this year where he started out really good, then he started to slow down a little bit, and it was like he kind of got worn down a little bit. Again, he is only 25. He'll be 26 in February. He's got a bright future, but the injury and the overall durability is a serious concern. And do you really want to go out there and give him, a 5-year, or a 4-year, $64 million deal, 4-year, $60+ million, 5-year, 65, 70 type, million, 16 per year for a running back that has already torn his ACL and for a running back that is at times this season showed some signs of slowing down, signs of getting tired. How many more years can Barkley truly go out there and give you 1,000+ yards a season? How many more? In his 5 years, he's at 3 years above 1,000 yards. His first 2 seasons, 2018, 2019, and again, this past year, where he had 1,312 yards, 295 carries, and 10 touchdowns. He averaged 4.4 yards per carry. So he was very good this season. But you have the durability concerns. And running back contracts are hard because, again, you just never know. You can give a guy a 5-year deal. He could be 4 years into his career. He gives you 3 years, and in the final 2 years are awful. Sometimes running backs in the NFL only play 7-8 years. That's it. Barkley's going into his 6th season. If you give him a 5-year deal, can you trust him year 10, year 11 to still be playing at a high level? Can you trust him year 9 of his career to still play at a high level? Those are the concerns that the New York Giants have. So when I look at the numbers, I say 100% yes, you pay Saquon Barkley $16 million per year. Not even just looking at the numbers, but I mean, he was so valuable to this Giants offense. He was the most talented player. And he was a big reason why Daniel Jones had the success that he had. You don't have Saquon Barkley on that team, this Giants offense is not nearly the same. And I'm not saying they were the Kansas City Chiefs offense with Saquon. They weren't that electric, but they were, they got the job done. They did. And those games where they started to struggle, they lost to the Lions, they lost to the Cowboys, they tied to Washington. Those games were the games that Barkley wasn't running the ball and Barkley wasn't getting many yards. In that loss to Detroit, he had 22 rushing yards. In that loss to Dallas, he had 39 rushing yards. That loss to Philly, he only had 28 rushing yards. The loss to Washington, or the tie to Washington, he only had 63 rushing yards. He did have a touchdown. That wasn't that bad. But the games that he struggled, the Giants struggled. The games that he didn't get as many carries, the Giants didn't really win those games. The numbers show you that. But durability is a concern. But that, again, that's the opposite side. It's like, okay, well, those are the type of games that we need a running back to step up. And Barkley this season, and Barkley going forward, can he do that? Can he play 17 games where he doesn't have that 3-4 game or that end of the season slump where he's tired, he's worn down? That's the question. Here are the top 5 currently running back contracts in the NFL. So Ezekiel Elliott currently leads the league. 6 years, $90 million, $15 million per year. Alvin Kamara's behind him, 5 years, $75 million, $15 million per year. As I mentioned, CMC's deal is a 4-year deal, $64 million, $16 million per year. That currently leads the NFL. And then Dalvin Cook's a 5-year deal, $63 million. He's making $12,600 per year. And Derrick Henry is making 4 years, $50 million, $12,500,000 per year. Now, I will tell you this. I circled 2 guys on this list. Elliott's contract, it's been rough. Like the last couple years, it's been a little iffy. Like this season, Elliott's not the same speed, fast, quick player he once was. Like Elliott right now, does he deserve to be playing, or does he deserve the 6-year, $90 million contract with the way he's playing? No. No, he doesn't. And Christian McCaffrey, he's a great player, but he had injury history. And for Carolina, they gave him that big deal, and they traded him at the beginning of this. They traded him this season. So that never really worked out either. Elliott right now, it looks tough. And Christian McCaffrey, from Carolina's perspective, it doesn't look good. Now, from an NFL perspective, CMC's a big player to San Francisco. I'm not doubting what CMC did. I'm just saying from Carolina's perspective, hindsight 2020, they probably shouldn't have gave Christian McCaffrey that big-time contract when they just traded him this past season. So that's the risk you take, where a deal could blow up in your face. You could sign Barkley to a 5-year deal. He gives you 2 years, and in the final 3 years of that deal, he can't stay healthy or is just not the same player. And I don't want to sound negative. You don't want to. We would love to see, Barkley, he's only 25, but the injuries are a concern. Let's just say 5 years, 5-year deal. Next season, he plays 11 games. The year after that, he plays 8 games, then 6 games, then 10 games, then 12 games. If that's the production he's going to give you, you can't give it to him. But if you feel like last season, whatever he did in the offseason, where he, whatever he did in the offseason to get ready, last year was phenomenal. Phenomenal. It was a career year for him. He had the most carries he's ever had, second most touchdowns he's ever had, most yards he's ever had in the season. It was a career year. I mean, he did what he needed to do in a contract year last season. So based on the numbers, you give Barkley the deal. I would be willing to give him $16 million. I would. I don't know if I wouldn't go any higher than that. I wouldn't give Barkley an $18 million deal. I would not do that. That's too much. You want to give him $16 million? Okay. I don't know. Injuries are a concern. I get it, but it's a part of the game. Anybody at hindsight 2020 anybody can get hurt, really. You could sign Daniel Jones to a 7-year deal and he could blow out his knee this training camp and play 12 games the next 3 years. That's just the reality of the NFL. So we'll see. Two big offseason conversations with the Jets and the Giants, specifically with the two quarterbacks and the running back. I mean, I think the Giants are going to get Jones back. I think they're going to focus on Jones first, and they're going to focus on Barkley. I also think you're going to see a lot of other teams out there. I don't know. I mean, it can kind of go either way. Part of you kind of says, like, which out of the two players, who's more popular amongst the league? Like, which teams would really want? Like, I mean, I guess it goes down to which teams are in need of a running back opposed to which teams are in need of a quarterback. I mean, just trying to think of some of the teams that need a running back. I mean, the Dolphins could use a running back. Not saying that they're going to get Barkley, but just going through the names. I mean, teams that need a quarterback, though. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of teams that out there would take a Daniel Jones. You know, can't really think of any. I mean, to go through like the AFC. I mean, the Steelers maybe. Browns don't. They got Chubb. He's actually top 10 right now. I think he's like 7th highest running back contract. Titans don't. Jaguars don't. Colts don't. Although Jonathan Taylor he wasn't as great as everybody expected this season. Texans don't. They got Dameon Pierce. The AFC West, I mean, Chargers, no. Vegas, no. I mean, Jacobs is out there possibly, but Denver could ever, need a running back. So I'd probably say there's more. There could be. I mean, it's probably about even. I mean, if you would have told, if I'm an NFL GM though, and you asked me, you have a choice between Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, most people are probably taking Barkley. But I still think the Giants are going to go lock up Jones, lock up their quarterback, and then see what they can do with Barkley. I don't know, something about them not being able to reach a deal with $12 million per year. Kind of that being where the Giants are. And again, this could be like the Judge extensions where during the season, the Giants, gave him $12 million deal. The Jets or the Yankees before last year gave Judge a $260 million something deal. He ended up making like $100 more million after last year. That could be a similar situation with Barkley. The Giants could look back on the full body of work and say, man, statistically, he was the top 5 running back. Where would this offense be without him? If he can stay healthy, sure, you give him $16 million. So it'll be interesting to see what the Giants navigate. Two of their, two up-and-coming, two of their best players this season on offense are free agents. And the Giants, they got the cap space, so there's no concern there. It's not like they need to choose between one of the two. They can bring both back with the cap, but they're going to need to make a decision, and it's going to be a tough one. All right, so the NBA game's on tonight. You got the Magic Pacers, Hawks, Thunder, Nuggets, Bucks, Timberwolves, Pelicans, Wizards, Rockets, Grizzlies, Warriors, Jazz, Trailblazers, Kings, Raptors, and the Spurs, Lakers. Nets will be in Philly tonight at Wells Fargo Center against the Sixers, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN. We heard news yesterday that Kevin Durant will be reevaluated again in 2 weeks, so not really what you wanted to hear, but hopefully once 2 weeks is up, he can get back into kind of contact stuff, get back into real drills and scrimmages and 5-on-5 play and all that good stuff, and get back into action. I would probably assume, if I had to guess, Kevin Durant's not back until after the All-Star break. That would be just my opinion. And as for the NHL games on tonight, we got 5 on tonight: Islanders, Senators, Hurricanes, Stars, Blue Jackets, Oilers, and the Canucks, Kraken, Rangers on the road in Toronto against the Maple Leafs tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can find this game on TNT. Rangers looking to build off of their win they got the other night, 6-2 win over the Florida Panthers. Igor almost scored a goal. They'll hit the road tonight in Toronto and look to get the win over the Maple Leafs. Currently third in the Metropolitan, 26-14-7, 59 points overall. Hurricanes, 66 points. Devils, 66 points. Rangers, 59. Penguins, 56. Those are your top 4 teams. Capitals on the outside looking in with 56 points as well. Then it's the Islanders at 51, Flyers, and Blue Jackets. That's your Metropolitan. So the 4 spots, it's up for grabs. It's between the Penguins, Capitals, and the Islanders. Islanders are 5-game losing streak, so they're struggling right now. But for the Rangers, 59 points right now. Opportunity tonight against a good Maple Leafs team who's very good in the regular season, can't win in the postseason. We'll see. I mean, the Bruins this year are unbelievable. I mean, 38-5-4, 80 points this season. They're crazy. They're crazy. I mean, they're literally on a win streak every night. They win like 5 games. They'll win like 8 games in a row, then they'll lose a game. Win 8 games in a row. I mean, when you're 35-4, that's 30-8. 38 games played. That's That's like 72-9 Warriors record there. You know? Or 73-9, not 72-9. Warriors going 73-9 is wild. But that's kind of what the Bruins season's shaping up to be historic. I don't exactly know off the top of my head what the most historic hockey season ever, best record was. I mean, the best basketball season was originally the 90s Bulls. They went 72-10. And in the Warriors back in, 2016, they went 73-9 and then blew the 3-1 lead to the Cavs. So that season gets remembered, but it would have been remembered a lot more if they would have capped off and been able to find a way to win one of the final 3 games, which they couldn't. But, man, oh, man. The Bruins, I mean, if you finish like 50, if you finish like 65 and, like, I don't even know. It would be crazy. The Bruins could be up there in like 60-plus wins this year. I mean, they're already at 30 right now. So, we'll see. See how it all plays out tonight. So, a lot going on. And should be good. So I will see you all back here Friday. Will be Football Friday podcast, getting you ready for the NFC and AFC championship games. Kentucky also got the win last night. They'll be back in action on Saturday against Kansas. So a big weekend. We'll be back Friday, getting you ready for all of that. And as always, hope you enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.